Welcome back, everybody, to I'm just going to say the stock market because I don't know if it's redraft or if it's dynasty. Who knows? Today,
All dynasty.
All dynasty, sure. Okay, all dynasty. Today we have the second installment or part two from last week. It was the offenses that you should be targeting. Today, we have the offenses that you should be avoiding. We'll hit the intro and get into it.
Are you ready, Jerry?
I'm ready.
Just want to make sure you're ready, brother. Show me the money.
All right, so I don't know if you want to break down your costume. If not, you can just hop right into it. So how you doing? If you want to break it down, go for it. If not, just go into it.
It's a Care Bear. You know, it's very cozy, comfortable. It's cold where I am. But more importantly is the crest from this particular Care Bear stare. I don't remember his name, but it's
okay.
The rainbow. You know, it's Pride Month, right? You know, the Supreme Court just laid down a landmark decision blocking discrimination in the workplace for gay and transgendered people. And I'm excited about that. I want all of the LGBT community listening and watching to know that Dwee's Nuts and the Fantasy Stock Exchange as a whole group, whether they believe it or not, we are an ally in your fight. Let's go. Come on.
We have like dress up days at work we do since we're on meetings. So we like put backgrounds and stuff. And today was black, then brown, and then it goes through the rainbow. So I totally forgot that. I didn't even think that would have been why you wore that, I guess. I figured you were just kind of messing around, or what kind of are, I guess. But
not at all. I'm very serious. I want
people
to know that I support their struggle. I wish you were wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt right now.
I'm sorry.
I don't think you are.
Alrighty, so today, like I said, offenses that you should not be targeting. And I will preface that some of these, there are players that like you have to draft. This is a lot harder than offenses to target because there's players on every team that probably makes sense to draft. So I'd say this one might bake in more of an ADP than the others due to positional value, stuff like that. I only could think of two or find two that I really liked. You have three, so if you want to go first, and then I can go in the middle.
Yeah, you know, I said this when we did the last week's show. At a certain price, everybody's draftable, and at another price, everybody is undraftable. So it definitely ADP comes into play here. You know, as you've talked about several times, there's a lot of complex factors in building a dynasty roster. So team makeup comes into play. All these things come into play. Don't take anything we say at face value. It's information to add to all the other stuff that you've got coming in to make the best possible decision for your team. And yes, when I did this, I very much looked at, you know, what is the price for the value that I'm getting back? Do I want a piece of that or not? So my first offense, a great example of this, it's the Baltimore Ravens, and I'm going to say avoid all pieces of the Baltimore Ravens offense. That's not to say I don't think Lamar Jackson is a fantastic quarterback and a fabulous fantasy football asset. He absolutely is, and in a dynasty league, you know, he's young too. He's a guy that a lot of people are drafting, and I don't have a whole lot of problem with other people drafting him. My issue is that at the 104, which is what his current ADP is, it's just too rich for my blood. I think you can get quarterbacks that are comparable or nearly comparable much later. So it's a price that I don't want to pay. When I think about Lamar, he had an insane year last year and, yes, separated himself from the pack. But he had a 9% touchdown rate throwing the ball. That's not a thing that happens. That was the 15th best of all time, tied Aaron Rodgers from 2011. That's not going to happen again. He doesn't throw it very often. We can't expect a ton of touchdowns like we saw last year, just not replicatable. On top of that, look, he ran for 75 yards a game last year. The best rushing quarterback of all time, Mike Vick, who is better at it than Lamar, say what you will. I'll argue this till I'm blue in the face. Mike Vick's a better rushing quarterback, averaged 50 yards a game over his career. That's a sustainable number. You're going to see a lot of defenses set up spies and try to slow Lamar down and dare him to beat them on the passing game. You're going to see outside linebackers, defensive ends, much more disciplined with their edges. I think defenses are going to play better to Lamar. This is what happens in the NFL, right? You can't do what Lamar did last year more than once in a row. There's too many good athletes and too many good coaches that are dedicated to stopping that happening. It's going to slow down. So, not to mention, look, they bring in J.K. Dobbins to take some of this rushing work away, some of these rushing touchdowns away. They've got so many people running the ball that rushing work for Lamar is going to come down. And Harbaugh's not an idiot. He can't just let his quarterback keep doing that. 170, whatever it was, carries last year. A stat line, just so you know, my stat line for him right now is 3,100 yards, 30 touchdowns. Still a really high touchdown rate just because of the threat he brings. But he falls all the way down to 850 yards rushing for me, 5 on the ground. That makes him a tier 1 quarterback. He's a tier 1 quarterback, but he does not separate himself from the other 3 quarterbacks that I have in tier 1, guys that you can get in the middle of the second round, like Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray. Those guys go later. I'd rather have them pay less for them. Outside of Lamar, the only other player on this team that it feels like everybody wants a piece of is Mark Andrews. Going in the 3rd round, though, still too high for me for a tight end. Even in a tight end premium, I have a hard time paying that price. Outside of that, who else is worth owning on this team? Mark Ingram, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards had 120 carries last year. Like, don't sleep on Gus Edwards. Plus Lamar on the ground. That means there's a volume vacuum for this backfield. It's so hard to produce year over year with a lack of volume. Volume is king in fantasy football. These guys aren't going to get it. The thing that saved Mark Ingram last year was his red zone work and his work. First of all, the team had a league high 28 carries inside the 5-yard line. Mark Ingram had 15 carries inside the 5-yard line, scored 8 times inside the 5-yard lines. One of the reasons J.K. Dobbins comes in is to do some of that work. He's a fabulous short yardage back. That's going to be taken away from him. But the team had so many opportunities in close. Again, not something that repeats itself year over year. It's not one of those sticky stats you hear about. At the wide receiver position, Hollywood Brown, Miles Boykin from last year, bring in Devin Duvernay. You still got Willie Snead, James Prochet, the nation's leading pass catcher last year. This is, again, too many fucking people on this team. Another target or volume vacuum. Last year, this team threw the ball. They were 26th in pass attempts. They just don't throw it very much. We know that's what Lamar's game, and that's not going to change a whole lot. Marquis Brown led the team in wide receiver targets last year, and he had 71 targets. 71 targets. Fucking Michael Thomas had 100 more targets than the number 1 wide receiver on the Ravens did last season. He was 82nd in the league in number of targets. The second highest target getter at the wide receiver position was Willie Snead. He had 46 targets. That's 144th in the league. I don't want anything to do with the backs, anything to do with the wide receivers, and I'm not paying those prices at QB or tight end.
Yeah, I think the running backs to start is confusing for me in redraft because I know that Harbaugh is going to use 3 running backs and Lamar Jackson. Like, I get that the whole Gus Edwards was a restricted free agent, but to me, like, that team was so good they could afford to take J.K. Dobbins. They literally did not need anything else besides a linebacker, and they got probably the best one in their first-round pick. So, yeah, I think that it's just confusing. One thing with Lamar, his TD rate was 9%. If you average that to the average of like the top 40 fantasy quarterbacks, it was like a 4.5. He still would have been the QB2 by like 4 points, or the QB1 by 4 points, showing that his rushing game is what has to sustain if he's going to be. I still feel like he's like QB4, like locked in. Like, I can't imagine he falls.
Oh, definitely top. I think I have him at 3, but they're all those 4 guys have equal shot of being the one at the end of the year for me.
Yeah, and I think another thing with that is people are like projecting this TD rate for Lamar, but they're not taking into perspective that means Mark Andrews' TD rate's going to drop too. Like, it has to.
Yep.
The man played on 42% of the snaps, and everyone's like, oh, Hayden Hurst is gone, insert more snaps. No, because he played all of his snaps in the slot. They just drafted 2 of the best slot receivers in the nation last year, in Duvernay and James Prochet, because they don't want their franchise tight end playing the wide receiver position. Nick Boyle's still the starter. Mark Andrews, if you were to a big, long list of like taking the TD rate, dropping it, all that stuff, basically what happened was after I did it, if you would have dropped his TD rate and subtracted all the average yards per touchdown in terms of every time he scored, it was like 14 yards, he would have went from tight end 3 to tight end 7. if we would have seen a tight end 7 that played 42% of the snaps, no one would think Mark Andrews is this breakout candidate coming into this year. So, yeah, I think we have to expect a regression. The only guy I might have is Lamar, just because that rushing.
I know you love him. I heard you just the other day. I watched a video earlier today where you argued that he had better be the 1.102 in all dynasty drafts.
Yeah, I don't know. My thing is his broken tackles, if I remember right, he had like 2 broken tackles last year. And to me,
is that it?
Yeah. To me, like, it's because no one can catch up to him.
Hard to touch.
That's why it is. And to me, I know he can break tackles if necessary because we saw it in college for 2 years. He broke a lot of. He won the Heisman. So
he broke a lot of college tackles. Let's be clear about it.
That's true. But I still think, I think that this team is just so good that he still sustains high enough value. But I do understand the concerns, especially when you can get Dak probably. I guess you took Superflex ADP 9 picks later, but in single quarterback leagues, probably 7 rounds later, to be honest. So, yeah, I feel that for sure. My number 1 here, and you got to bear with me, so it's the New York Giants. So, obviously, Saquon doesn't count for this, like draft Saquon. That's why it was hard to find spots because running backs are needed depending on the team. So, the graphic on the screen
but would you draft Saquon over CMC?
Oh, no, never. It's CMC all day. Actually, so before I put the graphic on the screen, just going to break down the Giants a little bit last year. So last year they were 16th in touchdowns per red zone attempt, 23rd in yards per drive, 22nd in points per drive, 18th in touchdowns per drive. So they were not good. They actually dropped 10 spots in total DVOA from the prior season, where I'm pretty sure Eli Manning kind of played and the Richmond quarterback kind of played here and there. They actually dropped in DVOA. Daniel Jones was just not good. Now Daniel Jones' ADP is rising as if he's this breakout candidate. But if you actually look back at his games last year, he had he put 11 total games. He had 4 games of less than 11 points, 3 games of 11 to 15, which you would not start him in any of those 7 games, and 4 games of 28+. Those 28+ game against terrible teams. Like the best defense was the Bucks, but they played him in week 3 when they were not clicking. They were just getting torched all day long. Now he comes in with the second hardest schedule based on 2020 win totals. So what are we projecting in terms of he's just going to like magically flip the switch and perform against these really good defenses? Yes, he gets to play the Redskins twice, obviously, but their defense, it's not great, but they still have a solid front 7 to cause pressure. Their corners suck. So they lock him in as a starter there. And maybe games here and there, but I just think that his ADP is rising maybe a year too early, you could say. I think a guy like Drew Lock will have a similar trajectory next year if he hits. I think Daniel Jones will too. We kind of see this with the sophomore/third-year quarterback. So I'm just a little hesitant on him. So now on the screen is a graphic that it's pretty chunky or bulky or whatever you want to call it with data. So basically this is breaking down every possible.
You're alienating your viewers with this math, Lucas.
So
fantasy football players are not smart people. You gotta dumb it down.
I'm gonna dumb it down here. So when it comes to these 3 receivers, there really is no good game split to take, right? We see this with the Dolphins team this year. No one knows what side to take on the receivers because there's solid game splits for both sides. So I was thinking, how can I show which game splits matter? So on the screen is literally every single possible game split you can take for each receiver compared to with each other receiver, tight end, and each quarterback. I'm not going to obviously read through all that. But basically what you need to look at is the green columns showing the differentials, the gray columns showing the plus-minus differentials from their whole season per game stats. And then on the bottom, it shows the average or the sum of those plus-minus differentials. So we'll just go off PPR points because that's the one that matters, right? In this, you want as close to 0 as you can because you want to be able to be relied on no matter the situation with Eli Manning, with Daniel Jones, without Sterling Shepard, without Golden Tate, with Evan Engram. Doesn't matter. You want as close to 0 as you can. And as you can see on the PPR points, average of the plus minuses, we have a -10 for Slayton, 11 for Shepard, and a 5 for Golden Tate, showing that none of them were close to 0 by any means. Like 5 is close, but still, compared to the rest, it is not good. To me, this means that there's no good receiver to draft on this team because it's going to be so up and down that you don't want to draft them. That's all I'm saying, offenses to avoid. I just probably will avoid them at all costs in redraft. Best ball is another case because I think you can Shepard's a really good best ball candidate because he dominated when he played. Just injury concerns are there. And then one more thing, when they were all active, they split in 6 games, 2, 2, and 2 in like the highest points of that week out of the 3. So basically, they're all the same receiver, and you're just rolling the dice to see who scores more fantasy points. And their ADPs, I didn't pull them up or I didn't write them down. They were pretty close in terms of like a 10 wide receiver, like, I don't know, like 30-something to like 45 range. So I just don't know what side to take. So in the end, I think I'm just going to choose neither. I don't know. How do you feel about the receivers? Like, do you have a favorite one? In Dynasty, I think it's Slayton. Like, obviously, like who you would take earlier. But
it's got to be Slayton. In a couple of drafts, I'm in 2 drafts right now. I think one just finished up, but I've been staring at Golden Tate in round after round. He just sits there, and I can't make myself pull the trigger on him. As many fucking targets as he saw last season when he was playing, it's so hard for me to pull the trigger. What is he, 32 years old now?
Yeah.
Tough to lean on somebody like that who's going to probably miss games again, just like the rest of these fucking guys. I disagree with you about Daniel Jones. You know that. We talked about Daniel Jones before. I think he's awesome. He's my QB 10. I stand by it. I think he's going to be a stud this year. Anytime you say his strength of schedule is tough, like, understand that strength of schedule based on last year is always such a hairy fucking thing to lean on because defenses are all up and down all over the place.
It's based on projected win totals, which is still not great, but like it's better than last season's production.
Sure. Projected by whom?
Warren Sharp. He's like an advisor for NFL coaches. So I'm not a dumb guy, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, I like Slayton. I like Darius Slayton. His ADP for me is solid. It's in the 40s. It's not a huge risk taking a wide receiver in the 40s, I think. So I'm taking Daniel Jones and trying to stack him with Darius Slayton wherever I can. I know that Slayton's biggest games came with Eli Manning, and not Daniel Jones. But look, long term, Golden Tate's not long for the NFL. We have seen in small spurts Shepard shine, but over most of Shepard's opportunities, game-over-game opportunities, when somebody's been down, like when Odell was down however many weeks back in the day, like he has a hard time maintaining any kind of consistency even when he's not hurt. So, yeah, I'm taking Slayton and I'm taking Daniel Jones. But
yeah, I think the one thing, so the graphic, if
you didn't mention Evan Engram. Is just the injuries or
and I think the injuries, and I get that people are like, but if I can get him for 7 games, he's a good value. But he's ADP tight end 6, so like that's not baked into it whatsoever because the tight end from like tight end, I guess you could say 5 because Mark Andrews and Zach Ertz are pretty high ADP. 5 to 9, the ADPs are all similar, so it's just. There is upside there, I guess, in terms of he's a beast when he plays, but come on, we say this every year for a reason because he's not going to play a full season. I guess the one thing you can kind of leverage, if you go back to that graphic, or it'll be on the draft guide with the full write-up, is you can see they have the perfect core of like different sets of receivers. So they have their speedy tight end, they have their slot guy in Golden Tate, they have their deep guy, you could say, their one in Slayton, and they have their flanker and Shepard. So if you go back to that graphic, you can see that, like, say Ingram's out, Tate thrives because he's the over-the-middle guy. But if Slayton's out, or I think it's the other way around, if Shepard's out, Slayton thrives because he's the true alpha. So that's something where you can kind of maneuver it there. You could say if Shepard goes out, then maybe you just plug in Slayton. But that's just still kind of risky in terms of, like, you're banking on that. So I don't know. I would probably just avoid it because there's too much question marks there for me.
Sure. I'm with you on the Engram thing too. I did just take him in a best ball. I think he's a great best ball option if you're going to get other tight ends, especially in a tight end premium. But there are some tough pieces. Like, you're making some tough calls here if you're taking players from those teams for sure. All right, I'm up next.
Yes, sir.
This thing's getting real warm. I'm sweating.
I bet.
But I haven't shaved my head in a while, so I'm not taking it off. It looks real bad. Like, I look real old. All right, I'm gonna talk to you about the New England Patriots offense for a little bit. This one seems pretty obvious to a lot of people. But the reason most people would probably tell you that the Patriots are an offense to avoid is Jarrett Stidham right now. And I don't know that that's going to be the case. I think there's a lot of confidence from the coaching staff about Jarrett Stidham. And you know what? Tom Brady Tom Brady has – okay, so people are going to dislike this take, but Tom Brady has been a game manager for years for Belichick. Belichick, by the way, is the ultimate game-managing coach. He knows how to manage a game, and he and Brady succeeded because Tom Brady, at this point in his career, is the ultimate game-managing quarterback. It's not like Brady single-handedly won a bunch of games for this team. We even won Super Bowls for this team on his own. He had help, lots of help. I don't think the team is set up to lean on Jarrett Stidham to win a ton of games for them or be even super productive for them. There's a reason fantasy players over the past few years, even if they've been winning Super Bowls from the Patriots, have been hard to draft on your fantasy teams because it's just not how they win. But anyway, Stidham is what Stidham is. Like, he's going real late. If you want to take a flyer on Stidham, fine. I've done it in a couple of dynasty leagues. But certainly not looking to have him on my team as a starting quarterback anywhere. If he's your 3, fine. Anyway, Stidham out of the way. Let's talk running backs here. Obviously, the running back situation for a Bill Belichick coach team is always hairy at best. You never know week to week who to start. So having one of these guys on your roster is always the roll of a dice. Now, last year, Sony Michele had a lot higher percentage of the running work than people think he did. He was pretty consistent in his usage, not very consistent in any kind of efficiency metric. He wasn't very good last year, even though they kept giving him the ball. But you take this hairy backfield, and now what news comes out this week? Sony Michele just had foot surgery. Unknown timetable for when he'll come back from that surgery. We won't know until he's on the training camp field running around and doing stuff. So he may miss some games. Like, we don't have any fucking clue. That makes it a lot harder to draft in recent ADPs. If you look on Fantasy Calculator, so Sony's not being drafted at all inside the top 60, which probably stupid, but tough to do. Then you got James White in a dynasty league. James White, fine, but he's only got 1 year left on this contract, and there's no reason to believe they're going to bring him back because the team is perfectly willing to move on from their players and find somebody else to fill a role. They've set that precedent early. Damien Harris is going as the running back 55 right now, which might be worth that dart throw. Like, I'm especially with the Sony news. Damien Harris might be interesting at the running back 55. It's free. You're not spending anything to get him. Might be worth putting him on your roster. I don't love it though because it's still a Patriots backfield. Wide receiver position. Let's change gears here. You got Julian Edelman, who he's been great over the last few years, but let's not kid ourselves. He's 34 years old. He does have 2 years left on his contract, but if it doesn't go well this year, I don't expect him to be back on this team next year, whether it's his decision or the team's decision. He's going wide receiver 55 in a dynasty startup league right now, which, again, sounds like there's a lot of value there, but you better fucking make sure your team's makeup is ready to handle a Julian Edelman. 1, he's 34 years old. 2, the last time he started 16 games was never in his entire fucking career. Just doesn't happen. He played in 16 games last year, but how many of those was he hobbled, came in for, 30% of the snaps, whatever it was. That's kind of what he does now. Outside of him, you got N'Keal Harry, who people are in love with right now. I don't know why. He had 12 catches in 2019. Great. Mohamed Sanu, I think his ADP is starting to come up a little bit, but he's 31 years old, only 1 year left on his contract. He played on this team eight games last year. In 7 of those, he had less than 35 receiving yards. There was one good game. I'm not leaning on that. They bring in Damiere Byrd for 1 year to see if he might click with the quarterback. They bring in Marquis Brown for 1 year to see if he might click. There's nothing about this receiving core that is any more clear than a fucking puddle of puke in your lap. You ever have a puddle of puke in your lap?
I don't, but I do have some takes on Edelman because he's gonna. Okay, so obviously this is like dynasty, but just kind of in general. So last year I had Edelman ranked as my wide receiver 9, and I got basically made fun of, and he finished as wide receiver 6, and I have him ranked at wide receiver 16 right now, and I think that's way too low because Tom Brady was not good last year. Like I have the numbers right here. I pulled it up, so I'm glad you brought that up. The only thing that leaves with Tom Brady is the whole team captain aspect. There's no talent leaving now in his career. He had the most pass attempts last year since his career since 2015. Low in the most of pass attempts, lowest career touchdowns per game, lowest career yards per game since 2010, and lowest yards per attempt since 2002, when he was like a third year or second year. I don't even know. Everyone wants to blame it on their offensive line because maybe the one game they watched, they saw a sack, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's why they suck. They were 9th in adjusted line yards, 5th in pass protection, and he took 6 sacks below the NFL average. The O-line was fine. They're now bringing back 2 of their offensive lineman starters that were hurt last year to help Jarrett Stidham. Now they have good depth there. I don't care who the quarterback is for Edelman because this is Bill Belichick's system. As much as we want to say that Tom Brady called plays and blah, 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 if you actually watch, they ran in a huddle literally every single play. The only time they would run no huddle was 2-minute drill, which was like maybe 2 times in Tom Brady's career. There was not much times when he actually ran 2-minute drill. Edelman thrives in the slot. 101 out of the 147 targets came from the slot. With a new quarterback, you see every single time that a slot receiver is the favorite, especially when it's by far and away the best receiver on the team in Edelman compared to freaking Damiere Byrd's probably going to start, or Jeff Thomas from Miami, a 6th-round pick's probably going to start for him this year. Who knows? So I just think that Edelman is such a great value in Dynasty too, because what do you get him in the 15th, 16th round? And he will start every week for you. Like, everyone wants to say, and I keep harping on this, this will be in the draft guide, the whole upside thing. Like, what is upside? Upside is getting 10 points in your flex in the 15th round of your fantasy football draft. Like, that is why you win fantasy league. That's how you win fantasy league. So I have him in probably every single Dynasty league, and I will probably have him on every single redraft league. Because what if I'm wrong? Okay, I'll just drop him. He's my 9th-round pick. I'm not going to drop him, but he's my 9th-round pick. Who cares? But if he is what he has been his whole career, with a game manager quarterback with a team with a good defense, good offensive line, then I'm getting well above the ADP and the return that I put into him. So fade the rest of the Patriots because I don't know what the frick's happening there. But take Edelman all day. The running back thing was weird because I'm surprised I don't know, because I feel like they wouldn't have waited this long to mention Michelle's banged up. I don't really know what was.
No, it just happened. I think he had the surgery in May.
Really?
It was just bothering him over the offseason, and finally it wouldn't go away, so he decided, let's go get a surgery. I don't know what the surgery was.
Yeah, I don't know. They didn't really disclose much information. I mean, and they could easily be a team that goes out and gets Devontae Freeman or LaShawn McCoy or like something like that nature. Trade for Royce Freeman from the Broncos. They're definitely incapable of doing that. So I like the Damien Harris take because I think he's a better athlete, especially now since we've seen Michelle run in the NFL anyways. And I have him on quite a bit of dynasty leagues too. Kind of a high price to pay when I got him, so I'm hoping it pays out. But
I mean, there's not a lot of reason to believe it won't. I mean, if he gets any kind of opportunity, Belichick hates rookies, so he only got 3 carries last year. But Belichick,
he was hurt too.
So let's not discount him from that performance. It's just not something that the Packers do. Obviously, the only other position on this team is tight end. There's 2 rookies, Matt LaCosse and Ryan Izzo. None of those guys are going to be worth a shit. I don't necessarily agree that Edelman's going to be the shit. I want to see what Stidham likes first, right? Because a big part of what Edelman was over the last 5 years was, he was dick deep in Brady's butthole. So
for sure,
I don't know if Stidham likes it in the ass like Brady liked it in the ass. We'll see. And if he does, fine. But I'd avoid him, and I'll give up that 10 points in my flex for the games that he does. But you said he'd start for you for every game, but he's never done that ever. He's never started 16 games, even in the NFL.
I guess it was more,
I know.
Well,
all right.
For sure.
Go ahead with your next one.
I got the Oakland Raiders here, and
it's the Las Vegas Raiders.
It doesn't matter what they are. They're just the same team either way. So John Gruden's the coach. Before you start, I wrote them down as my number 2 team, and I started doing the research, and then I decided that I didn't want them in there. Oh, so I thought you were about to say I took your
you're
team.
Wrong. You can try to prove me wrong, but I think you're wrong. Go ahead.
Okay. So last year, Derrick Karr had his most fantasy points. So last season, 2019 was his most fantasy points from the 2 years prior, and he was QB 17. Like, to me, that is exactly where his fantasy value is. Like, there's no what it was 4 years ago when he was actually a good quarterback with Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree and whoever the coach was, a more creative coach that didn't just want to run normal football. So Derek Carr is a QB2 at best, and not that his ADP is not there, but just take someone with way more upside that has a clear path to being a QB1. He was 17th in deep passer rating, and his 2 years prior was lower than that deep passer ratings. I don't know why people like think he's a really good downfield thrower. Like they're always like, but if they throw the ball downfield, he's just not that great in downfield throwing.
Let me stop you. Are you still going about Carr? Go. You finish your thing about Carr, but I want to say some stuff about Carr.
Okay. His positional, I know I pulled this up for last week for the QB, like it's the averages of the fantasy people around them for the quarterback. His RB1 average finish in his career, PPR 19, wide receiver 1, PPR 28, wide receiver 2, PPR 38, and his tight end, PPR 15. So there's nothing really there. Like Amari Cooper was like the only really good thing. Obviously Jacobs last year. And yeah, Jacobs was hurt a couple games, but he played 3 less snaps per game than the average top 100 fantasy PPR running backs and was 15th in points per game. So he was very efficient last year. I'm not going to argue that. He was really good last year. But Jalen Richard's still there. They signed him back, too, meaning they wanted him there. Lyndon Bowden comes in. They signed Devante Booker after they tried to sign Frank Gore. So, like, they're not trying to make him a workhorse. They're trying to limit him to the first and second down work like he was last year and not give him any targets. They had 28 targets last year. I don't think that goes up. Like, especially the moves they made. And that was 28 targets with their wide receiver 1 being Hunter Renfrow. So, like, I just don't see that going up. So, to me, it's just like it's there. Like, maybe take Jacobs if it's, like, the last running back and sort of that, like, two-round tier of running backs. But, like, I'm not expecting this, like, big breakout from a guy that's literally in a 4-way committee. Like, Devante Booker played a ton of snaps for the Broncos last year, and he was the third-string running back because he's good at pass blocking and he's efficient when the ball is thrown to him. And obviously they preferred to sign him, so this is not really what I want in my running back. I don't want to be watching the game and be like, yeah, Jacobs 5-yard carry, 3-yard carry, and then he gets pulled out and it's a 3 and out for the team because they couldn't complete the third down pass. So it's not something I want to do. And he's going ahead of Eckler, Aaron Jones, and CEH. That was redraft. He's probably ahead of Jones in Dynasty. I just prefer those guys a lot more because we've seen the higher ceilings and they still have similar floors, I think. In the wide receivers, I literally type gross because I don't know who you want out of this wide receiver room. Like, do you want the rookie that never did anything in college? Do you want the guy that gets you 5 catches and 50 yards and Hunter Renfrow? Do you want the analytics guy and Brian Edwards that broke out at age 17? But there's a reason he was in the third round because he's actually not that good. Like, if he broke out at age 17, you'd think he'd be a first-round pick. Or Tyrell Williams. Like, I don't know what you're trying to accomplish with this because the team's not going to run 4 wide. They're probably going to run a lot of 2 wide because they signed Jason Witten to potentially take away targets from Darren Waller, who had 7.8 targets per game. Like, it's just really confusing what they're trying to do. And Foster Moreau's still there. He played quite a bit last year. So in the end, I would just think to not take really any of them because there's a lot of room for disappointment. And I don't like ultimately to me, like in the end, I think they just finished right, kind of average. Like what they did last year, just kind of there, nothing really helping out your team. Obviously, Josh Jacobs helped out your team, but that value is going to stay pretty similar, if not a little less, because they're going to give them a little bit less of a workload. So just a team that I just don't want any part of, really.
Yeah, the wide receivers are fucking gross. And looking at tight ends, did you realize that Foster Moreau, who only had 25 targets last year, scored 5 fucking touchdowns?
He's a better tight end than Darren Waller. Like he actually is.
5 touchdowns away from Darren Waller. So one thing I want to ask you about at the running back position. So you said, they brought some guys. They brought Booker in. They kept Richard. But DeAndre Washington leaves this team. He had 108 or 110, whatever it was, carries last year. That's a lot of vacated carries. I know some of those came when Jacobs was injured there. He missed a game or 2 at the end of the season? But
2 games, I think, yeah.
Does that – I mean, like, do you see some of those carries going his way, or is Booker just going to come in and swap that 100 right away?
No, I don't know, because I don't like projecting out 16 games. I used to do that, like if you played 16 games. But if you actually look at like a good one's like Terry McLaurin, like everyone's like, if he would have played 16 games, but I think he was like wide receiver 20-something. All the receivers that finished ahead of him in PPR, only one played 16 games. So it's really rare for people to play 16 games. So like, yeah, you can extrapolate it out. And if this would have happened, like obviously, yes, Jacobs will probably get those carries, because you're projecting him to play 16 games in general when you're making your draft. I think Booker is more of like I don't know, 6 to 7 opportunities a game. Rashard sees the same workload, maybe more if they got rid of DeAndre Washington and signed back Rashard. Maybe like Rashard can just take the third down work. And then Bowden, I don't know what they're going to do because he's listed as a running back, but like I envision him as like a slot receiver. But that's not the case.
He'll have more targets than carries for sure.
So yeah, it's just I don't know. And that's also I think fading Jacobs comes into play. Like there's so much other value around him that really has no risk to me. Like obviously CEH is still competing with Williams, but he's a first round pick. Eckler, they paid him, let Melvin Gordon walk. And what I said, Aaron Jones, like I get they brought in AJ Dillon. You're going to go into Aaron Jones next, but I still think like for a 1 year sample, like Aaron Jones is still a top 12 fantasy running back.
Yeah. The real problem here is that so like when it comes to Derrick Karr, the quarterback, it all starts with the quarterback and the play caller. I think when I watch Derrick Karr play football, I think he's a damn good quarterback. I think he has all the physical tools. We saw it in his brief MVP run. What was that, 3-4 years ago?
Yeah.
But his coaching staff, fucking douchebag Gruden, has put a hard cap on this guy. Look, last year, number 9 in passing yards. So this I've got him going almost 4,500 passing yards this year because that's what he does. But once they hit that 20-yard line, he shut the fuck down. 22nd in passing touchdowns. Like, okay, so we got deep ball concerns that you brought up earlier, but when they get close, he doesn't get the opportunities to score.
I don't know why. It's
Josh
bad.
Jacobs' opportunity, and that's all it is. And it's gonna maintain that. I don't think Derek Carr's had more than 22 touchdowns maybe since that MVP season, and before that didn't happen either. It's not going to happen this year. I think even 23, which puts a serious cap on what he can do. But I think he's going to quarterback 22, 23, 24, something like that. In my main dynasty league, the one that I've been doing for years now, I've had him on my roster as like a safety net for years because his floor is relatively high. His ceiling is absolutely as low as you can get for a starting quarterback, I think, in the NFL, but his floor is relatively high. So as like he's my 3 and my safety net quarterback.
I think like if he was on like, I don't want to say the Broncos, but like any team that like has good coaches and similar weapons now, like I would the Raiders have weapons. Like they have everything you would need to be successful. It literally just is John Gruden. I think people don't want to see that because they think it's cool that John Gruden's coming back to coach, that he had a TV show evaluating quarterbacks. It's kind of ironic that if he was evaluating quarterbacks, you can't have Derek Carr produce because Derek Carr is probably better than most of those quarterbacks that were on the show. So, once they signed John Gruden, I was like, yep, that's over. Like, he's like, there's no way he can – they paid him a 10-year contract, and he was not coaching for 10 years. Like, what? Like, what do you expect to happen? He's not going to come back and go beat the Chiefs, Chargers, and Broncos. So, it's just – I don't – I wish he would – I think Derek Carr's contract is coming up soon, I heard, or they have an out – on a podcast, they were saying like next year, and they did get Mariota, so maybe Derek Carr goes somewhere else, I guess. But I don't. Unleash
the beast. I'm glad. So I'm glad you brought them up. The reason I didn't is just because the ADP on all the guys on this team is so low. Mm-hmm. Outside of Ruggs, who's I think is a shitty option, but it's so low, it's hard not to at least consider. But I'm glad you brought them up because a lot of people right now are real excited about this offense, right? They're adding a lot of pieces. They draft 3 pass catchers in the first 3 rounds with 3 of their first 4 picks. It looks like, hey, maybe Gruden's about to loosen things up and let this offense have a circus about the field, but it's not going to happen because that's not who he is. So I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you mentioned it. People hear what he's telling you. This team is not going to be the high-flying offense that you might think just because they drafted Henry Ruggs at 12 overall. Not going to happen. All right. My last offense here for you guys, the Green Bay Packers. Not a homer call at all. I am a huge Chicago Bears fan. I fucking hate the Packers. I make a point never to draft any Packer on any of my teams anyway. But this year specifically, I'm staying away, and probably for the next couple of years. Therefore, in Dynasty this year, staying away. Look, Matt LaFleur comes into town last year, and he has installed his offense. There was a lot of will he or won't he when he first came to the team? Who's going to win out? Is it going to be Aaron Rodgers' offense or is it going to be Matt LaFleur's offense? That argument's over. This is Matt LaFleur's offense. The days of a top 5 scoring offense, gone. The days of a top 5 passing offense, gone. The days of Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball a ton in the red zone, gone. That's not the kind of offense Matt LaFleur wants to run, and he has won the fight between coach and quarterback in Green Bay. Now, in 2019, last season, they had 13 wins. A very quiet 13 wins, but it's a great – they're a really good football team. Great at football. Terrible for fantasy football. 15th in points overall, 18th in yards, 16th in passes attempted, right in the middle of the pack in all of those. Quarterback. I know Aaron Rodgers finished as the quarterback 10 last year, but he was streamable sometimes. To me, the quarterback 10 is streamable sometimes. It's not even a guy I necessarily want to go draft, especially when you have to get Rodgers. I think he's going as a quarterback 7-8 right now. Not interested in that. Every time Aaron Rodgers has finished as the quarterback 1, he was in the top 3 in red zone attempts. That's his bread and butter. That's how he made his career, throwing touchdowns, and most teams would put it on the ground and run it. That's not going to happen anymore. I think Bush would agree with me here when I say that Aaron Rodgers is just not that good anymore. Like, he's not a fantasy quarterback that you should be looking to do big things. If you're living and dying by his name alone, you're going to do a lot more dying than you're going to do living. Not to mention, if we're talking dynasty, like, who knows what's going to happen with this guy next year, the year after next. He has said he wants to be a Packer for life, but in an interview he did just a couple of weeks ago, he doesn't even know if he's going to be on this team next year. He's unsure of his future. Nobody has told him that he's safe and secure. Jordan Love, they trade up to get Jordan Love in the first round, so they're thinking about some stuff. Maybe they're thinking about saving some money. Probably not a bad idea. Look at the wide receiver position. Last season, Davante Adams had a tough year, wide receiver 24. Is he going to be better than that? Yes. His ADP is either the 2 or the 3. Everywhere I looked, I'm not paying that for a guy on a team that doesn't want to pass the ball anymore. Outside of Davante Adams, next best receiver last year was 68. Who is the wide receiver 2 on the Packers, though, Lucas? Is it Lazard? Is it ESQ coming back? Is it fucking MVS out there? Is it Devin Funchess, who they bring in because they want a big guy who's super smart and football intelligent, or whatever they're fucking saying about him out there in camp? Nobody knows.
I don't know, to be honest.
I got into a 2-hour argument with one of my podcast buddies about who the number 2. Now, this was we were doing a dynasty draft together, and we were in the 27th round trying to figure out which wide receiver to take. So that tells you something. We were looking at who the 2 was in the 27th round of our dynasty, because the 2 is worthless on that. Almost as worthless as the wide receiver 2 on the Saints. Tight end 21 for Jimmy Graham last year. Jace Sternberger is going to get the chance this year. You know what the hit rates are for a tight end in his second year. Even if he gets the opportunities, it's not real high. I'm not banking on Sternberger doing anything. Don't want anything to do with that. The only position that was successful on the Matt LaFleur offense last year was Aaron Jones at the running back position, but he scored a touchdown on every 15 carries last year. That's a stupid high number. You think Lamar Jackson's touchdown rate is coming down, then you better goddamn believe Aaron Jones' touchdown rate is coming down. Not in small part due to the fact that they draft in the second round a goal line back. Aaron Jones was fantastic in the red zone, but if you think between Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, and A.J. Dillon that Jones is going to be the one in there on most of these red zone carries, you better think again. He's on his contract year. I've heard you say before that you like to trade away players on their contract year in Dynasty. I don't think Aaron Jones is a Packer next year, even if they are, quote, talking about contract stuff now. So I'm avoiding Aaron Jones in Dynasty. Now, for redraft purposes, I'll take him because I agree with you. I think he's probably still going to be somewhere around that top 15. He's going somewhere between 11 and 15 right now, but in the Dynasty, I don't want to pay that at all because it's going to bite me in the ass sooner rather than later. Rodgers, what I say before, he was going around 8, I think it's 8 to 16, depending in a dynasty. Now at 16 in a dynasty, maybe, but no, I still want a piece of Matt LaFleur's offense is what I'm getting at here. All this to say, Matt LaFleur does not run a fantasy-friendly offense.
I think, the one thing, I agree 100% with what you said. The one thing I think people put in their head, and I heard this a ton after the draft, was Rodgers' stock went down because they didn't draft a receiver. No, like that's not the case. Like the value didn't go down because your mock draft wasn't right. Like that's not how this works. Like the value went down in Dynasty because they drafted Jordan Love, because there's an out in his contract next year and to save money. I'm gonna have a piece in the draft guide. Like the cap space is going to go down. That is going to affect your Dynasty roster. And I've already started and done a bunch of research and have a bunch of notes. Like we will see teams shift. Come like they got mentioned today when the whole like Zeke thing, coronavirus, whatever. Like then this came out again saying like look for teams to have a lot more players on their team on their rookie contracts. Look for a lot of undrafted free agents to make teams because stuff like this is going to happen. Like they came out and said like they were expecting players to get coronavirus because you have to. You can't like say no one's going to get it, meaning that like teams know they need to have a backup plan. So yeah, I think Rodgers' dynasty value, he honestly might be a trade. Like go get him because I don't think he's going to retire if he leaves. I think he's going to do what Brady did, exactly the same thing. I don't know how well. Like I don't know. I don't think he's a streaming QB or your QB2 in a super flex. Like he's not what he used to be. Obviously, we've seen that. But yeah, if he's on the Packers, like we saw last year, like if you played your streaming options right, which like if you have to guess on Aaron Rodgers, you probably shouldn't be playing him anyways. Like there's definitely some reason as to why not. Yeah, AJ Dillon, I don't know what the hell they were doing. Like I get the pick, but like not when you have Jamal Williams. Wait till next year when you have 0 running backs on your team. So I don't really know how to evaluate that. Do you think Aaron Jones will sign back? Because I'm having like mixed emotions as to like yes he will, but then I'm like no wait I don't think he will.
I mean if they offer him $9-10 million, like it's hard to say no to that, especially like the storied fucking franchise that is the Green Bay Packers. If they win another 11 games, he'll come back for less than that because he thinks that he's got an opportunity to win. But I don't think they're gonna make him an offer. I don't think he's back next year. For whatever reason, I don't think he's back next year. I don't think Jamal Williams is back next year unless they're paying him $2 million to stay or $1.5 million to stay. They're just prep. That AJ Dillon pick was a prep for next season. Maybe they're already aware of this salary cap stuff and they're preparing for it now because the running back is going to be the easiest place for people to save money. Always has been.
Yeah, I think especially with that cap hit, like my thinking was like he signs back at like an Austin Eckler type contract, you could, if you will, like a six-ish mil. Because I mean, in reality, like yeah, he was so good. People like last year, people think he was like a workhorse, but like he actually was like the change of pace back, if that makes sense. He was just in at the right time. So I don't know. It's interesting to see what's really going to happen there. And I there's the one thing too, they're still going to be a good team. Like they're going to probably make the playoffs. They're going to probably finish pretty high. They lost their right tackle in Bulaga and replaced him with he came from the Lions and he was like his PFF grade was like two points less. So like they lost Blake Martinez is really their only like big loss, and you can replace linebackers pretty easy. So yeah, I think people would seem like he's bad. The Packers suck because they didn't draft a receiver, blah blah blah. But like Devin Funchess is an upgrade over not getting anything, as bad as we want to say it is. So yeah, I'm with you. Just like a lot of these guys, like don't. There is upside, but just don't mess with the hassle of having to try and worry about it, and just take the safer, proven options that people seem to be undervaluing compared to last video where, I don't know, some of the ADPs were – I use Fantasy Mojo and use the calculator. I looked at the calculator the other day. Some of those were gross. Like, I don't know where they pull ADP from. It's bad. I don't really get half of them.
So let me – real quick, before we get off the Packers, what are you doing about Davante Adams at the 2 or 3? Is that somewhere where you're fucking with Davante Adams, who we know can be great? He can go 14 touchdowns in an off of a Matt LaFleur offense, but
he's tough because I don't know. The wide receiver is tough because there's so many guys that I just placed in tier 1 because I don't think there's a gap. Like Michael Thomas will regress because he just will. They added Emmanuel Sanders. The rates he put up last year were insane. They're probably going to switch to more of a running attack because Kamara was hurt a little bit more, I guess you could say. Then like Adams, like we're projecting this Michael Thomas year, but like he's never done it. Like the reason he was good 2 years ago is because he had 14 touchdowns. Like he had, and like that's why he was good. We've never seen him be the alpha guy, which I think he can, but like, are we going to see that? Like Tyreek Hill, like obvious reasons why he's not my number 1, like just hit or miss. Hopkins switching teams. I think Godwin could easily be the wide receiver 1 next year. So like, I just think there's a lot of guys that are all up there that I don't know what to do with. Julio, I didn't even mention. Like, so I would say like he's ranked in my dynasty wide receiver 2, but I would say like I'm not like I have to get him. I have to get Davante Adams, or else I don't want Julio. That type of thing.
It's a big tier. It's sort of like the Lamar Jackson argument I made. There's a big tier, and I'm willing to have any of the guys cheaper that have equal chance of finishing higher. Yeah, I'm with you there.
Yeah.
Right. Did you bring a? Well, I did. I have a terrible throat problem today. Like I haven't spoken for the last couple of days, trying to save my voice for you. But I'm gonna hit it hard with some peppermint whiskey because I feel like that.
Is that stuff like actually any good?
It's a fantastic shot, man. I love this shot. A little peppermint twist vodka. It's a great shot.
We'll get it in there. Get it in for the people.
Smells good.
So anyone listening, if you're still listening while Dwayne's pouring, the draft guide, July 6th. We are almost – well, we're not almost done, but we are almost done, if that makes sense to you. We're getting there. Yeah, it'll be updated. We have our form we're going to send out that we'll make sure you guys all get with all the info to purchase and stuff. Anything else you want to add about are your projections? Are you going to make like multiple runs, or what are you thinking for your projections?
Oh, I'm almost done with my projections, and then once they're up there, yes, I change them every time a new piece of whatever comes out. I don't know how we're going to make them live on the website, but that's your job to figure out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out eventually. We have a couple other cool things I don't want to give away because I don't know if it's actually going to work out. That'll definitely be unique. So,
yeah. All right, I'm going to take this shot. You did promise me to bring – I'm a half shot, though, because I'm sick. You did promise me a shot today that you dropped the ball on.
I'm going home this weekend, so I'll work on it.
Lastly, go hug your transgender friends. It's a big day for them. The Supreme Court finally did something right, huh?
I guess.
Yes. Equality for all, baby. All right.
Alrighty.
Peace out.
Peace out, guys.